First impressions can be wrong. My name is Kretsch, and I have been the head administrator of Medical Station Zenith 9 for 12 standard cycles. In that time, I have seen doctors from 40 different species walk through our doors. The Verkeen with their 8 manipulator limbs perfect for surgery, the Talixians whose telepathic abilities let them sense pain before instruments could measure it, the mighty Gorvin whose strength allowed them to handle patients 3 times their size without mechanical assistance. But when Dr. Maya Reeves stepped off the transport shuttle from Earth, I felt something I had not experienced in years. Worry, deep, genuine concern that we had made a terrible mistake accepting her transfer request. She was impossibly small, perhaps 1.65 meters at most, which made her shorter than even our Quillith nurses, who barely reach standard waist height on most species. Her frame looked delicate, almost breakable, like those decorative glass sculptures the artesian traders sold in the station market. She had pale skin that seemed too thin, dark hair tied back in what I later learned humans called a braid, and hands that looked far too small to grip surgical instruments properly. The welcome that felt. It's like a warning welcome to Zenith 9, I said, activating my translation implant. I am Administrator Kretsch. I hope your journey was not too difficult. Maya smiled, a gesture I recognized from the human cultural database as indicating friendliness. Thank you, Administrator. The journey was long but comfortable. Your station is beautiful. I have been looking forward to working here for months. Her voice was soft, almost musical compared to the harsh clicking of my own species or the deep rumbling of the Gorvin. It made her seem even more fragile, more unsuited to the harsh realities of emergency medicine in a station that served as the primary medical facility for 6 entire sectors. Dr. Vornak, our chief of surgery, approached from behind me. His massive Gorvin frame cast a shadow that completely engulfed Maya. He looked down at her with what I knew was skepticism. Though his face remained professionally neutral, Dr. Reeves, he said, his voice like grinding stones. I understand you specialized in trauma medicine on Earth. Yes, Maya replied, seemingly unbothered by his size or tone. I worked in emergency response for 8 years. High-impact injuries, environmental trauma, mass casualty events. Whatever came through the doors, Vornak glanced at me, then back to her. Our trauma cases here are considerably different from what you might have experienced. Many of our patients outweigh you by factors of 10 or more. Some have biochemistry that would be toxic to your species. Others require physical manipulation of tissues that demand significant strength. I understand, Maya said, still smiling. I have reviewed the species database and studied the medical protocols. I am confident I can adapt to your methods. She was so calm, seemingly unaware of the impossible situation she was walking into. Human doctors had worked in the galactic community before, of course, but always in research positions or administrative roles. Never in emergency trauma, where split-second decisions and physical capability could mean the difference between life and death. The test no one expected, we gave Maya the orientation tour, showing her the surgical bays with their specialized atmospheric controls. The intensive care units calibrated for dozens of different species. In the emergency intake area, where ambulances and medical shuttles arrive daily with cases from across the sector, this is where you will spend most of your time. During your shifts, I explained as we stood in the trauma center, cases come in fast. You will need to assess, stabilize, and either treat or transfer to specialists within minutes. The pace can be overwhelming, even for experienced doctors. Maya walked through the empty bay, her small hands trailing along the equipment. She examined the monitors, the scanning arrays, the surgical tools mounted on their magnetic strips. Everything was sized for the average galactic physician, which meant most instruments were too large for her to comfortably grip. I can work with this, she said finally. Some modifications to the tool handles would help, but it is manageable. That was when the alarms started screaming. Red emergency lights flooded the corridor. The station's communication system crackled to life. All medical personnel to Trauma Bay 3. Incoming mass casualty event. Repeat mass casualty event. Mining accident on asteroid station Kepler 7. Multiple critical patients inbound. 8 of 4 minutes. Vornak was already running, his heavy footsteps shaking the deck plates. I followed, my heart's racing. Maya came behind us, moving faster than I expected but still struggling to keep pace with our longer strides. Baptism. By fire, the trauma bay exploded into controlled chaos. Nurses rushed to prepare beds. Surgical teams assembled their equipment. Vornak began shouting orders, assigning personnel to different areas based on the preliminary casualty reports coming through. 18 injured, he called out. Multiple species. Crushing injuries, explosive decompression, severe burns. This is going to be bad. The first transport arrived with a screech of emergency landing protocols. The doors burst open and medical teams rushed out carrying patients on hover gurneys. I saw immediately that the preliminary reports had been optimistic. These were not just injuries. These were catastrophic traumas. A Gorvan miner with his entire right side crushed by falling rock. His thick hide split open to reveal damaged organs. A Talixian whose telepathic organs had been ruptured by sudden pressure changes, causing them to broadcast pain to everyone nearby. 3 Quillith, trapped under a collapsed support beam, their small bodies broken in ways that made me feel sick just looking at them. Triage, Vornak shouted. Critical cases to Bay 1. Stable injuries to Bay 3 move. That was when I saw it. The worst case. A young Verkeen, maybe 30 cycles old, impaled through the torso by a piece of metal shrapnel. The fragment had gone completely through their body and was now preventing them from bleeding out through sheer pressure. But the moment it was removed, they would have seconds before death. Nobody move that patient, Vornak commanded. That is going to require a full surgical team and prepared blood supplies. We stabilize everyone else first, then we tackle that case with proper preparation. Maya walked past him. She moved directly to the Verkeen patient, her small hands already reaching for the medical scanner hanging on the gurney. Dr. Reeves. Stand down, Vornak said firmly. That patient is beyond your capability. We need specialized equipment and multiple surgeons. Maya ignored him. She was studying the scanner readings with intense focus, her eyes moving rapidly across the data. Then she set the scanner down and placed her hands on either side of the metal fragment. What are you doing? Shouted, starting toward her. If you remove that shrapnel without preparation, the patient will bleed out in under a minute. Not if I am fast enough, Maya said quietly. Her voice had changed. No longer soft or friendly. Now it was cold, focused, like sharpened steel. I need blood supplies, a coagulation matrix, and a tissue regenerator. 30 seconds after I pull this out. Can you do that? Vornak stared at her. We do not have surgical clamps prepared. We do not have the hemostatic field generator active. You cannot possibly work fast enough to save them. Maya looked up at him, and I saw something in her eyes that made my spine chill. On Earth, she said, we do not always have time for perfect conditions. We work with what we have. Now get me those supplies, or watch this patient die. I am pulling this fragment out in 10 seconds either way. Impossible, Speed. Vornak snapped orders. The trauma team erupted into motion, grabbing supplies and positioning themselves around the gurney. Maya counted down, her hands steady on the metal fragment. 3, 2, 1. She pulled. The fragment came out smoothly, coated in green Verkeen blood. The wound should have erupted like a fountain. The patient should have died right there, but Maya's hands moved faster than I could track. She was inside the wound before the blood even started flowing properly, her small fingers navigating between organs with impossible precision. She located the severed arteries, applied pressure with one hand while reaching for surgical sealant with the other, all while calling out instructions to the nurses who were struggling to keep up. Coagulation matrix. Now. Tissue regenerator set to maximum. I need 3 units of Rekent, compatible blood standing by. Someone monitor cardiac function and alert me immediately if it drops below 40%. Her hands never stopped moving. Sealing vessels. Repairing tissue? Working inside a body cavity that should have required multiple surgeons and hours of careful preparation. She was doing it alone in real time, while the patient's life hung by the thinnest thread. 2 minutes later, she stepped back. The wound was closed. The patient's vital signs were stabilizing. Green blood still covered Maya's arms up to her elbows, and her uniform was soaked. But she was already moving to the next critical patient, the Talixian with the ruptured telepathic organs. She said, wiping blood from her forehead with her sleeve, "They are broadcasting pain shock to everyone in the bay. If we do not isolate their signal, every doctor and nurse here will be incapacitated within 10 minutes. I need a psionic dampener and permission to attempt a temporary nerve block." I just stood there, frozen in shock. Vornak found his voice first. How did you work that fast?" The surgical technique alone should have taken 20 minutes with a full team. Maya was already examining the Talixian, her scanner in one hand, while her other hand gently touched the patient's damaged cranial ridge. "I trained on Earth," she said simply. "Our medical schools do not have the luxury of perfect conditions. We learn to work fast because our patients do not have time to wait. The truth comes out over the next 4 hours." Maya worked without stopping. She stabilized the Gorvin with the crushed side, performing what Vornak later told me was the most precise internal organ repositioning he had ever witnessed. She treated the 3 Quillith, her small hands perfect for working on their delicate bone structure. She handled burns, decompression injuries, and 3 separate cases of toxic atmosphere exposure. When the last patient was finally stable and transferred to intensive care, Maya collapsed onto a bench in the break area. Her uniform was destroyed, covered in blood from 6 different species. Her hands were shaking slightly, the first sign of weakness she had shown. Her face was pale, exhausted. I brought her water, or at least what the human dietary database said was appropriate for her species. She drank it slowly, her eyes closed. "You saved 16 lives today," I said quietly. "According to the preliminary assessments, we should have lost at least 6. Your speed, your precision, I've never seen anything like it." Maya opened her eyes and looked at me. There was no pride there, no arrogance. Just tired determination. "Can I tell you something about Earth, Administrator?" "Please," I said. Sitting down across from her, Earth has a gravitational force 9.8 meters per second squared. For humans, that is normal. But I looked up the standard for most galactic species before I came here. You evolved on worlds with 60 to 70% of that gravity. For my entire life, I have been living under weight that would crush most species. My muscles, my bones, my cardiovascular system, everything developed to handle that constant pressure. I began to understand. "Your strength, your speed's normal for a human," she finished. "But that is not the important part. Earth is also a world where diseases mutate rapidly, where injuries happen constantly, where our own immune systems sometimes attack us without reason. Human doctors do not just learn medicine. We learn to fight against a planet that is actively trying to kill our patients. Every single day." She set down the water container. "When I was in medical school, I worked in an emergency room in a city called Lagos. We had limited supplies, constant patient overflow, and cases that would arrive already dying. I learned to work with what I had. I learned to move fast because moving slow meant death. I learned that perfect conditions were a luxury, not a requirement." She looked at her shaking hands. "Every human doctor learns this. We call it practicing medicine under fire. It makes us different from species who evolved on gentler worlds. Not better, just different. Adapted to chaos." The new reality Vornak appeared in the doorway, its massive frame filling the entire space. "Dr. Reeves," he said, and I heard respect in his grinding voice. "I owe you an apology. I judged you based on appearance and made assumptions about your capabilities." "That was wrong." Maya stood up, though she swayed slightly from exhaustion. "No apology necessary, Dr. Vornak. You were being protective of your patients. That is exactly what a good chief of surgery should do." He moved closer, looking down at her with what I now recognized as wonder. "How many years of training do human doctors complete?" 8 years of intensive study after basic education," Maya said. "Then several more years of specialized training depending on the field. Emergency trauma medicine requires an additional 5 years of practical experience before certification." Most of that is spent in high-stress environments, working extended shifts. Handling cases that push the boundaries of what is possible. She smiled slightly. We have a saying on Earth. What does not kill you makes you stronger. Our medical training follows that philosophy. By the time a human doctor finishes their education, they have already survived conditions that would break most beings. We are not trained for ideal situations. We are trained for when everything goes wrong. I thought about that. About a species whose doctors were forged in conditions of constant crisis. On a planet so harsh that survival itself required constant adaptation. About medical professionals who considered today's mass casualty event not as something overwhelming, but as simply another day at work, Dr. Reeves, I said. I think we need to adjust your role here. She looked at me with curiosity. Sir, you are not going to be just another trauma doctor, I explained. You are going to head our crisis response team, the cases nobody else can handle. The impossible situations, the patients who are already dying when they arrive. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. I can do that. Of course you can, Vornak said. You just did. The station's darkest hour, 3 weeks after Maya joined our staff, everything changed. Not gradually, not with warning. Just suddenly, catastrophically. In the way that disasters always seem to arrive, I was reviewing supply requests in my office when the station shuddered. Not a small vibration, but a violent lurch that knocked data pads off my desk and sent me sprawling against the wall. The lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized at emergency level, painting everything in sickly red. All personnel, report to emergency stations, the automated system announced. Critical structural failure in Sector 7. Repeat, critical structural failure. Atmospheric breach detected. Evacuation protocols initiated. My blood went cold. Sector 7 housed our primary life support systems, the water purification center, and 3 of our 4 backup power generators. If Sector 7 was compromised, we had maybe hours before the entire station became uninhabitable. I ran to the command center, my forelegs carrying me as fast as they could through corridors already filling with emergency personnel. The main view screen showed the damage. It was worse than I feared. A cargo hauler had suffered catastrophic engine failure during docking. Instead of the automated systems catching it, the safety protocols had failed. It's probably due to old maintenance issues we had been putting off due to budget constraints. The hauler had crashed directly into Sector 7, tearing through hull plating like it was paper. Atmosphere was venting into space. Internal bulkheads were collapsing. And worse, much worse, there were people trapped inside. Casualty report, I demanded. The sensor operator, a young Quillith named Pip, looked up with terror in their eyes. Unknown administrator. Communications with Sector 7 are down, but shift records show at least 30 personnel were working in that area. Engineering crews, maintenance staff, civilian water purification specialists, 30 people. 30 lives depending on us acting fast and acting right. Vornak burst into the command center, still wearing his surgical scrubs. What is our response plan? The station commander, a grizzled Talixian named Sorthox, pulled up tactical displays. We seal off Sector 7 completely. Prevent the atmospheric breach from spreading to other sections. Emergency bulkheads are already descending. Once the sector is sealed, we assess whether the remaining structure is stable enough for a rescue operation. Vornik's eyes widened. You are going to seal them in? They will run out of air in less than an hour if we do not seal the sector. The entire station loses atmosphere, Sorthax replied grimly. 30 deaths versus 3,000. The math is clear. I felt sick, but I could not argue with the logic. We cannot reach them in time anyway, I said quietly. Rescue teams would need to navigate collapsed corridors, avoid structural failures, work in near-zero atmosphere conditions. It would take hours we do not have. That was when Maya's voice came over the communication channel. Administrator Kretsch, this is Dr. Reeves. I am in the medical bay adjacent to Sector 7. I can hear people on the other side of the bulkhead. They are alive, but they are injured and scared. How long until rescue teams arrive? The command center went silent. Everyone looked at the view screen showing Sector 7's structural diagram, showing the maze of collapsed corridors and the rapidly decreasing atmospheric pressure. "Dr. Reeves," Sorthak said carefully, "there will be no rescue teams. We are sealing the sector." "I am sorry." There was a pause. Then Maya spoke again, her voice very calm, very controlled. "You are abandoning them?" "We do not have a choice," I said, hating every word. "The rescue operation would take too long and risk too many additional lives." "I am sorry, Maya. Sometimes there are no good options." Another pause. Longer this time. "Then I disagree, Administrator. I am going in." Against all orders, the command center erupted in protests. Multiple voices shouting through the communication channel, trying to order Maya to stand down, to follow protocols, to accept the impossible situation. "Dr. Reeves, this is Commander Sorthax. I am ordering you to evacuate from your current position immediately. The emergency bulkheads will seal in 90 seconds. If you attempt to enter Sector 7, you will die with the others." Maya's response was simple. "Then I will need to work fast." The security camera feeds showed her entering the emergency equipment locker. She pulled out an atmospheric suit, but instead of putting it on properly, she just grabbed this helmet and air tank. She left the heavy protective layers behind, wearing only her medical scrubs and basic boots. "What is she doing?" Vornak whispered. "That suit is designed to provide protection in extreme environments. She is taking only the air supply. She is reducing weight and increasing mobility." I realized. She knows the suit would slow her down. We watched on multiple camera feeds as Maya approached the emergency bulkhead that was slowly descending to seal off Sector 7. She had maybe 30 seconds before it closed completely, trapping her on whichever side she chose. She did not hesitate. She rolled under the descending bulkhead with seconds to spare, coming up on the other side in a sector that was already at 60% normal atmospheric pressure and dropping fast. "Dr. Reeves, please reconsider," I pleaded through the communication channel. "You are throwing your life away." Her response came through, slightly distorted by the failing communication systems. "Administrator, humans evolved on a planet where atmospheric pressure varies wildly. Mountains with thin air, valleys with crushing pressure. Our bodies adapted to handle rapid changes. I can work in low atmospheric conditions longer than most species." She was moving through the damaged corridors now, climbing over debris, squeezing through gaps in collapsed structures. Her small size, which I had once seen as a weakness, now let her navigate spaces that would have trapped larger species. But it was not just her size. It was her speed. She moved through the wreckage like water flowing downhill, finding the fastest path, never hesitating, never slowing down. When she reached a gap too wide to jump, she used pieces of debris as stepping stones, leaping between unstable platforms with perfect balance. When a section of ceiling collapsed behind her, she was already 3 meters ahead. Moving before the danger even registered, finding the survivors the trapped personnel had gathered in a water purification chamber, one of the few areas that still had structural integrity and a small amount of remaining atmosphere. Maya's camera feed showed them huddled together, a mix of species, some injured, all terrified. There were 12, not 30. The others had been closer to the impact site. They had not survived. "Hello," Maya's voice came through, calm and professional despite the situation. "My name is Dr. Maya Reeves. I am here to get you out. I need everyone to listen carefully and follow my instructions exactly. We do not have much time." A Gorvan engineer, their right arm crushed and useless, spoke up. "You are alone?" They sent one small human. No rescue equipment? No support team? Maya was already moving between the survivors, her medical scanner out and working. "I am what you have got, and I am enough. Now, injuries. Who needs immediate stabilization before we can move?" She worked impossibly fast. Temporary splints for broken bones, quick injections of pain suppressors, emergency bandages for bleeding wounds. She moved from patient to patient like a storm, spending no more than 60 seconds on each before moving to the next. "The atmospheric pressure in here is dropping. she said, her voice tight. We have maybe 10 minutes before everyone starts losing consciousness. We need to move now. Aquilith, their leg trapped under a fallen support beam, made a small sound of fear. I cannot move. I am stuck. Maya examined the beam. It was massive, easily 200 kilograms of solid metal. Under normal circumstances, it would require machinery or multiple strong individuals to lift. Everyone else? Start heading toward the exit corridor, Maya ordered. Follow the path I marked with the reflective tape. Move as quickly as you can. What about Lix, the trapped Quillith? Someone asked. I will handle it, Maya said. Go now. The survivors hesitated, then began moving. The Gorvan engineer stayed behind, looking at Maya with their good hand reaching toward the beam. I will help you lift. No, Maya said firmly. You have one functional arm and probable internal injuries. You will only hurt yourself. I need you to go with the others and make sure they do not get lost in the collapsed sections. The engineer looked at the beam, then at Maya's small frame. You cannot lift that alone. Watch me, Maya said, Dia, and placed her hands under the beam. Strength born of necessity. Watched on the camera feed, barely breathing. This was impossible. Even with Earth's higher gravity producing stronger muscles, there was no way a human of Maya's size could lift 200 kilograms of solid metal. She lifted it. Her legs bent, her back straightened, and the beam rose. Not quickly, not easily, but steadily. I could see her muscles straining under her skin, see the effort it cost her. But she lifted it high enough for the trapped Quillith to pull themselves free. Go, Maya gasped, holding the beam. Catch up with the others. The Quillith scrambled away. Maya lowered the beam carefully, then collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Dr. Reeves. Vornik's voice came through the communication channel. How did you do that? Maya pushed herself upright, still breathing heavily. Human muscle tissue has a higher power-to-weight ratio than most species. We evolved to lift, carry, and manipulate objects. Our ancestors had to move obstacles, carry injured tribe members, build shelters from heavy materials. We are built for this. She started moving again, following the survivors toward the exit. But your body must be at its limit. You should not be capable of more physical exertion. Maya laughed, a sound with no humor in it. My body has been past its limit since I entered this sector. Humans have something called adrenaline. Our bodies produce it during crisis situations. It overrides normal limitations, allowing temporary increases in strength, speed, and pain tolerance. Right now, my adrenaline levels are probably high enough to keep me moving for another 15 or 20 minutes. And after that, I asked quietly. After that, I crash hard, she admitted, but we will be out by then. I hope the final challenge the survivors had reached what should have been the exit. The emergency bulkhead that Maya had rolled under earlier. But while she had squeezed through a small gap, the bulkhead had fully sealed since then. There was no opening. No way through. She is trapped on the other side, Pip reported from the command center. The bulkhead mechanisms are fused. We cannot open them remotely. Can we cut through? Vornak asked desperately. Sorthak shook his head. That bulkhead is designed to hold back vacuum. Standard cutting equipment would take hours. On the camera feed, Maya was examining the bulkhead door, her scanner active. She studied the readings for 10 seconds, then turned to the survivors. Everyone needs to get as far back as possible, she said. Go back down the corridor at least 50 meters. Find cover behind something solid. What are you doing? The Gorvan engineer asked. Maya pulled out what looked like medical equipment from her emergency kit, specifically several small chemical compounds used in surgical procedures. Something is wrong here. These chemicals are not compatible. When they are mixed, they create a dangerous reaction. She was making explosives, using medical supplies, Dr. Reeves. Sorthax's voice was sharp. You cannot detonate anything near that bulkhead. The structural integrity in that sector is already critical. An explosion could cause a complete collapse. Then I will be very precise, Maya said. She was placing the chemicals at specific points on the bulkhead, creating what looked like a geometric pattern. I am not trying to blast the door open. I am trying to create a controlled failure in the sealing mechanism. Small explosions, correctly placed, should release the locking bolts without causing structural damage. Should, I said. That is not a word I want to hear right now. It is the word we have, Maya replied. She finished placing the last chemical packet and backed away. Everyone down, she called to the survivors. Cover your ears and open your mouths. This will be loud, she triggered the reaction. The camera feed whited out from the flash. When it cleared, the bulkhead door was hanging at an angle, one side released from its locking mechanism. There was a gap, maybe half a meter wide. Not much, but enough. Go, 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 Maya shouted. The survivors began squeezing through the gap, one by one. The Quillith went first, small enough to slip through easily. Then the others, struggling but making it. The Gorvan engineer went last, their bulk barely fitting through the opening. Maya started through but stopped. She looked back into Sector 7, her head tilted like she was listening to something. Doctor, everyone is through, I said urgently. The sector is going to completely decompress in minutes. You need to evacuate now. I hear something, Maya said quietly. Tapping. Someone else is alive in there, no? Fornak said firmly. Maya, the survivors are reporting all missing personnel are accounted for. There is nobody else. Maya did not move. I hear tapping. Human hearing operates at frequencies most species cannot detect. Someone is signaling for help. She went back into Sector 7, alone, running toward the sound only she could hear. While the atmospheric pressure dropped below 30% and the structure groaned with imminent collapse. The final rescue, the tapping, came from a side corridor that had completely collapsed. Tons of debris blocked the path. The camera feed showed Maya digging, throwing aside pieces of metal and composite material, working with desperate speed. Dr. Reeves, you need to evacuate, Sorthax ordered. That is a command. Maya kept digging. I am almost there. I can hear them. They are close. The atmospheric pressure alarm started screaming. 20%. 15%. At 10%, most species would lose consciousness. At 5%, brain damage became inevitable. Maya pulled aside a final piece of debris and revealed a small gap. Inside, barely visible, was a Quillith child. Maybe 5 cycles old. They must have been visiting a parent at work when the accident happened. Got you, Maya said, reaching through the gap. Her arm was too large. She could not coo.